Hello everybody and welcome back for some weekly VR news. As always, I am Mateo311 and this is your channel for everything VR related. Today's video is all about the VR games, as it's packed with new releases, announcements, and game updates. Plus, Meta has started a $50 million fund for Horizon developers, and they gave us a nice handful of updates with Quest version 74. Now, there are of course links and timestamps if you want to skip ahead, but before we jump in, this video is brought to you by my long-term sponsor, Kiwi Design. If you need any accessories for your VR headsets, go check out Kiwi Design right now. I've tested tons of different Elite straps with battery packs, and the Kiwi H4 Boost is hands down my favorite. It comes in a standard and Halo strap variant, and can deliver up to 3 hours of additional gameplay. So go click the link down in my description, and don't forget to use discount code Mateo311 for 5% off and to help support my channel. So let's start today's video off like normal with the check-in, and that's what have I been up to in the VR world. If you watched my content last week, I'm jumping back into a lot of PC VR mods. I just did a very small showcase of the Mad God overhaul for Skyrim VR, which is very impressive. I also showed off a demo for a game that wants to be a photorealistic Skyrim. So if you haven't seen that video, I'll link it above. I highly recommend you check it out. On top of that, there's not much going on. I'm actually jumping back into some much older games. And I think on that list is going to be a full playthrough of Star Trek Bridge Crew with some buddies. We'll see if that happens. And that's it, guys. Not much else going on. Let's not waste any time and get into the new releases. So first up, we have the early access release of Orion Drift. This is coming to us from the minds behind Gorilla Tag and Echo Arena, and they're planning to deliver a new social arena style game that can support up to 200 players. They're trying to not only capture everything that makes Gorilla Tag great, but also the competitive aspect from Echo Arena and wrap it all into a massively multiplayer social experience similar to Rec Room. Now, this generally isn't the type of game I gravitate towards, but it looks truly unique and I'll have to check it out. Like always, if you want any dedicated coverage of a specific game or topic, just let me know down in the comments. Now, next up, leaving early access and heading into full release is the racing title Retronika. Jump into a futuristic world where even flying cars still need to deal with traffic. That's right, you'll have a series of missions where you're racing through traffic or other deadly obstacles, and then you'll be upgrading your vehicle and battling through tons of enemies. I demoed the early access version a while back and definitely enjoyed the overall content loop and graphics, but it wasn't exactly my style, and I wasn't sure there was enough to keep me hooked long term. But if you are into some more casual racing games, I do recommend you check this one out. Now for the tabletop fans, we have All On Board. All On Board plans to be your tabletop board game simulator. At release, it'll include Rallyman GT, Escape the Dark Castle, The Hunger, Terraforming Mars, Istanbul, and The Binding of Isaac. There's also classics like Chess and Checkers included, and many more licensed titles on the way. Now, I demoed this title a few months back at Gamescom, and found it to be an excellent near one-to-one copy of the board games it's emulating. They also have a lot of nice features that make things more convenient, like at any time you wanted to review a card, you could just hover over it and the game will give you an up-close view, rather than having to reach out and physically pick up the card. Now, if you're interested in seeing more about this game, I am planning some coverage later in the week. Now, next up, we have a mixed reality game that I've truly been waiting for, and that's the RTS title Crystal Commanders. Prepare to turn your real-life environment into an epic battleground as you build up your base and army of vehicles, and then set them out against your opponent. There's a single-player story-driven campaign designed to dynamically adapt to your room, and you could also take on your friends in 1v1 mixed reality or virtual reality matches. I've been absolutely dying for a solid RTS game in VR, and I will admit this looks a little bit too casual, but I'm definitely going to give this one a try. But if you have no interest in casual titles, the zombie survival game Silent North is about to release in early access. This is in development by Combat Waffle, the same studio that gives us Ghost of Tabor. This is another title that I demoed back at Gamescom, and while I was looking at an extremely early build, it did show a lot of promise. So if you ever wanted to experience something like DayZ in VR, this is the game for you. Now, moving on from new releases, we have a bunch of awesome game updates to check out, starting with Among Us VR turning into Among Us 3D. Shell Games is taking the current Among Us VR and making it available to flat screen gamers. So this is the first time they'll get to experience the Among Us world from a first-person perspective, and the game will also be cross-compatible with the VR version. A demo of this will be available in the near future during Steam's Next Fest, and this is great news for both VR and flat gamers. Flat gamers get a whole new experience, and VR gamers should have a ton of new players to enjoy this title with. But if you're looking for something a bit more fast-paced, a brand new Linkin Park audio pack is coming to Drums Rock. This demon battling VR drummer actually features yours truly. That's right, guys, there's a Mateo311 skin that you can unlock in this game. And it also serves as my stamp of approval on this title, as it's a fantastic VR drumming experience that just got even better from a band I absolutely love, Linkin Park. And last up for game updates, the Call of Duty style shooter Zero Caliber 2 is still planning to release for PC VR. This title dropped a while back on the Quest, and while I thoroughly enjoyed it, it did have a handful of performance issues, and the immersion would have benefited from much better graphics. So I was really happy to hear that they're still working on the PC version, because I will definitely play through the game again, as it felt like a good old-fashioned Call of Duty single-player campaign. Now, developers Xreal have also announced that they are working on a spin-off title, so I'm also intrigued for that one. And speaking of being intrigued, it was just announced that the anime series Neon Genesis Evangelion is getting an official XR title. Now, I'm not actually familiar with this 1990s anime series, but I did check it out and it looks pretty damn cool, and I've mentioned time and time again how I'd love to see more anime in VR. We still have quite some time to wait for this one, as the first part isn't scheduled to release until 2026. And finally, before we get into some news from Meta, I just want to give a little bit of positive spin on the overall VR industry. Now, this isn't coming directly from me, it comes from Alchemy Labs, the developer of Job Simulator and some other titles, and they talked about how they believe that XR technologies is on the verge of mainstream. Now, I just want to talk about this because it's during a time where things are quite turbulent. We've heard about a lot of studios either closing down or firing a lot of people, whatever the case may be. It's not a great time for the overall industry. And this is not just VR. This is happening in the overall gaming industry. So that's usually not great news, not things we like to see, because it impacts us as the consumer. However, this is a very positive spin from them, or at least their personal experience. Now, this comes from an interview on Upload VR. I'll link it below. I recommend you check it out, because it is just nice to hear about the journey of VR development, how the direction they think these are going in, what makes VR shine. I love hearing about that stuff. Might not be for you, but it truly interests me. So again, go check it out. And now let's get into some updates from Meta. First up, they've already announced Meta Connect 2025, which is an extremely early announcement for them. Now, this has me thinking that they're planning to show off some really big stuff. But again, I do want to mention the fact that Meta has stated that 2025 is their make it or break it XR year. And I'm expecting a lot less gaming news and more mixed reality, wearables, and Horizon-based content. Now, fingers crossed that I make it out this year to cover it and don't pass out in the airport like I did in 2024. And speaking of Horizon, Meta has just opened up a $50 million fund to encourage people to develop on their platform. Now, I've talked about Horizon multiple times, and it has come a long way. It was really crappy in the past. I wouldn't say it's anything amazing yet. Like other titles like Rec Room and VR Chat still seem to feel much better than what you get from Horizon. But hopefully we'll see some really cool stuff developed. When you get the community involved and you throw some money at them, we'll see what happens. And last up, Meta has delivered some awesome updates in Quest version 74. This includes wired-based output to both DisplayPort and HDMI for those of you who do things like streaming or just want a high-resolution uncompressed, low-latency display from their Quest to a monitor or TV. At the same time, they've also vastly improved the wireless casting, which is great to see because if we have the option, I would like to remain tether-free. You could also now create web links, so if you want a little app icon that goes directly to something like the website for Netflix, you can do that. Multitasking is now a standard feature and no longer considered experimental. There's been color updates for their night mode. Spatial audio has been added into their calling application. And coolest of all, your headset can now remember multiple separate room setups, and it should seamlessly transition as you walk throughout your entire house. This is the type of mixed or augmented reality that I'm really looking for. You put on the headset and it adds a bunch of really cool things around your room, like a virtual display here and a clock there, whatever you want. And as you walk through your room, you have these different types of augmented items throughout your entire house. It knows where you are. It just adds all those really cool bells and whistles and features. I think that's what they're striving for. You know, as we move into the future, this is going to be the early baby steps. They're constantly using us gamers as their beta testers, but that's cool. I'm completely down for it. And on a similar note, the studio that brought us Pokemon Go is actually shifting away from gaming and moving into tech just like this. They're working on mesh remapping for environments. So this would be You put on your AR glasses or your VR headset or whatever the case may be, and then boom, your room is changed into, let's say, a grassy field, and your couch is now a hill or whatever you want. That's the future I'm looking for. So this is exciting stuff. Great updates from Meta. I know we always go, hey, this is the biggest update ever, but these are some significant improvements. It shows that they're dedicated to just upgrading every aspect of the headset. I know they tend to break half the features when they introduce new ones, but overall, this is looking good. I'm excited. I'd love to hear your feedback down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, consider subscribing. And as always, I'll see you guys on next time.